I gotta make some money, man. I can't lose my girl.
This man right here, you fell down to the ground, he just stepped right over you. He fixes fights. He's a liar.
Yeah, look, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you. I can't do this without you.
And I can't do this with you.
Why?
I don't train pro fighters.
What, you saying to me that if someone came in and offered the boys a pro shot, you wouldn't give it to him? All I need is 6 weeks. I can't lose my darling.
I am joined by Jake Gyllenhaal now, who gives quite a remarkable performance in Southpaw. And he's a man whose world falls apart. And it seems to me it's almost a rite of passage, the boxing role for American actors, like Hamlet or something. So what was it about Billy that made you step into the ring?
I would hope that Hamlet were actually more of a rite of passage for American actors, to be honest. Well, I think that there are two things. One, is a very angry character. He's a character that initially is filled with anger, with hatred, and inevitably, or not inevitably, but eventually moves towards anger as a motivation, but without hatred, because the anger with hatred is destructive and it sort of destroys his life. And I think I was curious in exploring the idea of anger in general and my own struggles with it, where it comes from, why, and just giving myself an opportunity and a context artistically to go and look at it. And I think fighting, particularly boxing, people kind of, and I did early on, assume that is driven by anger. And at times it definitely is. But it's sabotaging when it's driven in the ring with hatred. And it's really, boxing is really a technique that's maybe motivated by some kind of anger, but ultimately is a science that needs to be respected. And by the best, it is. And then the second part of my interest in it and why I was so driven and motivated by this movie was the idea of a father and a daughter, and the story of a man who has a kid but doesn't know how to be a parent early on, and then eventually has to learn really how to be a father.
I mean, he's a kid himself, really, isn't there? There's something there's many aspects to the role, not least of all the physical side, which I'll come to later, but the psychological side of playing someone like Billy. He grows up in the care system. His wife also grew up in the care system, so he has no parental guidance there at all. And he has to relearn everything. As an actor, where do you start? Obviously, there's the physical side, because you've got to develop that, because there's no way you're going to walk into the ring looking like Homer Simpson. So that's a given. You've got to do that.
Yeah.
But psychologically, where do you find him as a character?
Infantile. I think initially it's the story of someone who was, without parents and grew up in the system a certain way, where his only help and his only hope was, pun intended, I guess, was, because his name is Billy Hope in the movie, is his wife, the little girl he meets early on, who eventually becomes his wife. And she becomes a real, maternal figure in his life. And she is not as much in need of a father in the way that he is in need of a mother and a parent. So they don't have an equality in their relationship like that. And I think in turn, because of that, he doesn't really know what it's like to be a father to his daughter. Though he deeply loves her, he still acts like a child with her. And when those things in that family is separated, and he has to ask himself those questions where, for an infant, for a child, your initial response, you see a tantrum is thrown, or, someone loses their temper, or whatever happens, very emotional, very quick to jump on things. He has to learn how to grow up, and it's a really interesting moment in the movie where she says to him, Mom always said we had to take care of you.
Brilliant. It's a great scene. Yeah.
And he says, actually, he is honest with her, and he says, I'm hanging on by the skin of my teeth here.
He first says, that's not right.
That's not right.
Which I think is a wonderful thing, because you want him, at that point, you really feel he's going to break up, or he's going to, you know, they're sitting in this terrible apartment. He's really, but he sees a second chance at that point in the music. He can see it, both from his career and from his fatherhood. But when he says to her, "That's not right. She's, you know, I'm not here to be looked after by you. I'm here to look after you." And that's wonderful. I wanted to talk about Una Lawrence.
Oh, yeah.
And also about the audition process for someone like that, for you as an actor, because I read that you, in character, was in the process of auditioning young girls for your daughter. How was that?
I love it. I love reading with actors, and I love, selfishly, because I discover things about the scenes and also about my own performance and character, and then also because I love being there to try and protect them from the weird judgment that they may be feeling from the process, you know. Yeah. I mean, I know what it feels like, and I feel the same judgment even when I'm not auditioning. And like one of the most amazing feelings that I think I've ever had is reading with someone already having the role and realizing, oh, all we're waiting for is for them to come in and be amazing. But as an actor on the opposite side, you're just terrified. And at least from my perspective, when I audition, is like, you just feel this horrible judgment, you know, oh God. And sometimes there really is disinterest, and it's heartbreaking. Yeah.
But Una seems to have this quality, just perfect for the film, of she is a child, but she has this adult quality as well, doesn't she? She takes responsibility.
Yes.
There's a wonderful scene, there's lots of great scenes between you and her, and there's a wonderful scene over the Scrabble board when you go to visit her in the care home, and you tell her you're going to fight again, and she just lights up, and then very quickly turns and gets very angry. When you look at your daily call sheet and you see you've got that scene, or you've got 10 rounds with Escobar, which scene are you thinking, I can't wait to get into?
It's interesting you say that, because, you know, the fighting part, I was, you know, you go into it, you train. I trained for a very long time for it. And we shot it the first 2.5 weeks, all the fights. And then you finish that and you go, oh God, there's a whole emotional journey.
Exactly.
Not like you're not aware of that.
No.
But that is the hardest part. And walking into that scene with her, and the way we shot this movie, you know, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot this movie, so we would shoot 10 scenes a day. I mean, it was a manic schedule on this movie, in a way, partially because of the process that Antoine and I had, and that Antoine wanted to make this movie with, which was a lot of improvisation. So we would explore for a long period of time. Takes would go on for a long time. We'd discover something, we'd go somewhere else. And that was because of our need to make the behavior real. You know, we didn't want to make a movie where you'd seen the same behavior before. That scene with Una, and just Una in general, speaking about her, when she came in to audition, she came in wearing pretty much the same wardrobe that she wears in the movie, and Antoine said, I don't want you to change it. She wears these wonderful glasses, and she wore these oversized running shoes, and she was just an 11-year-old girl, a brilliant 11-year-old girl, and a brilliant 11-year-old girl who happened to be a brilliant actress. But we improv'd, and she was taking me to places. I remember her saying, I had auditioned with a number of girls, and she comes in, and we were talking about the first scene we were doing when I come in to see her. And she's in bed. She's counting the wounds on my face post the first fight. And I say, who are you playing with? Because at the time there were dolls and stuff. And she was like, oh, I'm playing, what are there, this guy and this guy and this guy. And all the other girls had said, oh, this doll, her name's this, and she's this, and we're having tea. And I go, cool. And we talk. Una came in and she said, this is Cynthia. And this is not really what she said, but she said, this is Cynthia. This is John. And I was like, what? And this is, you know, Jane or something. And I said, and she said, and, you know, don't mind his curly hair, because his curly hair is, and she all of a sudden just started creating
these. She was in her life.
Yeah,
you get that.
And I went, who is this girl? Who is she? And then when we talked about, then we went through many scenes, and she was extraordinary. When she was cast, we did that scene. I remember saying to her, because we'd come up with ideas, I said, you know, you can hit me. And
she does. I mean, you get hit a lot in this film, but it's when she hits you that it breaks your heart. You know, that's one of the things.
I think it will make me cry when I say this, but when you realize, and I don't have children, but when you realize what you teach your children and what they see.
Yeah.
And somehow in that moment, watching him and I watch it now, but I remember her hitting him and her inability, this beautifully articulate young girl who is so much more articulate than her father, incapable of expressing anything besides something physical like him. And it's like the thing that he taught her.
Yeah. I mean, and it's the one thing, but thankfully as well, she learns a lot from her mum as well. So there's you know, she is a great product of the marriage, because the one thing he does have at the beginning, you know, there's a slight arrested development around him at the beginning. He does have love, and he's capable of giving love and receiving love.
Absolutely.
And that's really his saving grace through the movie.
Absolutely.
The movie made me feel old for many reasons, but not least of all because I've met you before. I met you when you were 10 years old.
What?
Because I was in a film that your dad directed called Waterland.
Yeah.
And
Such
I remember
a great
you.
film.
I remember you and Maggie running around. So I've watched your career with great interest. But I want to ask, because your dad is a fantastic director. Your mother's a wonderful screenwriter, amongst other things. Wrote one of my favourite films, Running on Empty, and your sister's a fantastic acclaimed actress. Was there ever a time when you thought, this business isn't for me? I'm going to be a dentist or something? Or
Every day,
oh,
even
really?
today.
Really?
Yeah. Even walking into this room. I mean, I remember.
You're steeped in it, though, aren't you? You're steeped in this world, in the acting world, and I feel that you've chosen roles that really test you as an actor and bring you out. And you're different in every movie, and I think it's a wonderful testament. But where you came from was a very big Hollywood place, wasn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, you know, my father, you know, both my mother and father, you know, they lived in L.A. They came from, my mom came from New York, my dad came from Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. They came to LA because they love movies. You know, my father always said when he saw La Strada, he realized he wanted to make movies. And my mother always said when she saw Jules and Jim. And I think that was always the intent, was they were politically minded and socially minded as people, but also as filmmakers. And the whole sort of Hollywood system, and I know the way I do many interviews, and the sort of story that people like to paint is that. But what I remember is my father's deep love of actors. You know,
great actors director. I mean, that was what I loved about him, was he was just great. He liked actors. It always surprises me, because sometimes you say to people, "Oh, he's a director that likes actors," and they presume that all directors like actors.
Oh my gosh, no. Or aren't terrified of actors.
Yeah. People just don't know how to talk to actors, and
Yeah.
your dad always did. You know, so, and that's a great deep love of the human character as well.
Yes, and there are moments, and there are many moments, and I think my family's actually moved away from discussing really anything having to do with work, though we all do love movies deeply and believe in the power of a film. You know, I think we've moved away from, even culturally, kind of, we're a bit ashamed because of how crazy the world is to discuss, I think, the power of film, because you know, there's so much money in it, and there's so many egos, and there's so much absurdity amongst it. But really, I think there is a real power, and that's what I was taught by my parents, and it's what I hold on to, that there is an ability to make movies that have a real power to them.
Listen, it's been great. I mean, it is a wonderful performance. It's fantastic.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
When the Culture Show first started, I did a report about the rise of computer graphic animation, in which we had hand-drawn animators worrying that actually their art form was going to be lost, but quite the opposite has happened.
I'm sorry, this was the point at which I started going, then comrades come rally. Sorry, okay? As for the rest of them,
What was that?
That's the Internationale.